Please welcome Ms. Nishita Sinha.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Nishita Sinha and my project is experimental studies in developing safe sanitation solutions. So my journey kind of started in developing countries. Right now, 2.4 billion people around the world lack access to safe in-home toilets. This leads to devastating diseases like diarrhea, which in fact claims the lives of more than 500,000 children per year. A lot of this stems from the lack of priority placed on sanitation. Many don't see it as an issue on par with education or nutrition, and as a result, more people have things like cell phones than basic in-home toilets. So in particular, I looked at a case study of India. I did this because in India, open defecation is commonplace, 10 times as prevalent as any other country around the world. On the left, you'll see a map of India. Sorry, on the right. So this is a map of India. It represents how open defecation has changed in the last decade. So the places that are red and dark red and orange are places where open defecation has gotten significantly worse. Open defecation leads to harmful conditions like groundwater and soil contamination. I was actually fortunate enough to be able to visit and survey villagers located in this dark red orange area in North India right there. So in this survey of 30 villagers, I asked them questions pertaining to their current bathroom situations, their intestinal and stomach health, and also if they were interested in getting in-home toilets installed. So these are some pictures of the villagers I surveyed. So these results were actually very interesting. For one thing, they confirmed my initial suspicions that yes, open defecation is very dangerous, and yes, diarrhea is very prevalent in children. Many children don't go to school and often cannot perform basic household chores because of this. But perhaps more interestingly, more than 85% of villagers expressed a genuine interest in getting toilet systems installed, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so at this point, you're probably asking yourself, okay, well this is cool, but why don't we just get some of the traditional toilets that are so readily available in places like America installed in these villages? Well, there's some constraints that make this completely infeasible. For one thing, these villages lack a drainage system, and also village houses are very close together, so large septic tanks are impractical. In addition, the costs of these Western-style toilets are well outside the range of affordability of many of these villagers. So after this, I started looking into alternate toilet solutions. I researched about 10 different options, and I found some pretty interesting ones. One from the California Institute of Technology, in fact, used solar energy to effectively break down effluent. Okay, this was great, but it was also very expensive. So I had to go with something else. Finally, I came to a sort of happy medium. I chose this Solab International 2-pit composting toilet. This was a homegrown and locally available toilet in India, and thus it was very inexpensive, only about $500 per each system. It works in a pretty cool way. So it has 2 pits, and these are both underground. At first, only one pit is opened. So all the waste, as you go to the bathroom, is directed into this one pit. As this pit fills up, it is eventually closed off, and then the second pit is opened. So all the waste is directed there. While that second pit is closed off, in this first pit, anaerobic decomposition occurs, which basically converts feces into usable, safe, odorless fertilizer. This is also great because there's no gaseous output, which means less harm to the environment. Okay, so these are some better pictures of the pits during installation. So as you can see, around these underground pits is this honeycomb brick structure. So this means that as solid and liquid waste fills up in these pits, liquid waste can actually seep out through this honeycomb brick structure. And this seeps out into that surrounding cavity in the soil. At installation, this surrounding cavity is filled with a layer of sand. So basically, our process then becomes that solid and liquid waste enter this pit. Liquid waste flows out of this pit through the honeycomb brick structure, through the sand layer, into the soil, and eventually into the groundwater. The sand filter is there to act as a slow sand filtration system. It's meant to filter out pathogens out of the liquid waste so that before it enters the drinking water supplies. So slow sand filtration can actually be very effective. This data, taken from the BCDHE, shows the amount of bacteria in untreated effluent, represented by this red line, and effluent treated with this sand filtration. This is represented by this black line. So as you can see, sand filtration clearly significantly decreases the amount of bacteria present in this effluent, which means it was a good idea for Solab to use this. However, there was also this issue of space that I talked about a few minutes ago. In the villages, houses are very close together, so though the required sand filter layer is about 3 to 6 meters horizontally, Solab was only able to employ a 15 centimeter layer, which can significantly decrease the effectiveness of liquid waste filtration. So where does this leave us? Right now we have a toilet system that's pretty effective and very inexpensive. However, it has one major shortcoming in how it treats its liquid waste. So this is where my research comes in. The first step in my research was just to fully confirm this problem with the sand filtration, to make sure there actually was a problem that I was trying to solve. And the next step was to see if I could use natural materials that are locally available in these Indian villages to improve this filtration. These natural materials had known antimicrobial properties, and the idea was to add these to the sand filter bed. So this is just a list of some of the natural materials that I'm currently testing, include pebbles, burnt bricks, mustard oil, garlic paste, lime juice, and coconut oil. Okay, so how did I actually go about determining which filter was the best? I took a 4-step approach. The first step was just to model solid filtration as best as I could. The next step was to make a representation of human waste that was safe to use. And finally, I wanted to run these through the filters and compare how much bacteria got through for each filter. So to model filtration, I constructed what is known as plug flow reactors. I constructed this out of PVC tubing because it's durable and easy to use, and it's also easy to clean. In addition, I mounted a strainer at the top to represent the honeycomb brick structure I talked about before. At the bottom, I added this funnel just to make waste collection a little bit easier. I made 2 of these to make side-by-side comparison effective. So what am I actually putting into these filters? To model human feces, I used mashed potatoes. It sounds kind of weird, but basically it matches the viscosity of human feces very well. For urine, I used a 0.9% saline solution, and finally for fecal coliform, I used this non-pathogenic strain of E. coli. So basically now I had a safe, working, pretty much influent sample I could use. Okay, so then the question became, how was I actually going to run these tests? The procedure I decided on turned out to be pretty easy to work with. Basically, I would just fill whatever substrate I'm currently testing into this filter reactor model. So this might be sand or sand with pebbles, etc. Next, I would just run multiple volumes of this influent mashed potato sample through the filter. And I would collect 50 milliliters of the effluent each time. I would also measure the retention time this sample took to get through the filter. So after I got all these effluent samples, I needed to come up with a way to actually see how much bacteria got through. I did this using membrane filtration in the standard heterotrophic plate count method. It sounds really fancy, but basically what it boils down to is using these membranes to capture all the bacteria on their surface. So once I do that, I can move these to M-endo-agar plates and incubate these at 35 degrees Celsius. These provide the conditions for these fecal coliform or E. coli colonies to grow. And after 1 to 2 days, I can take these out of the incubator and actually see with my naked eye the red metallic colonies forming. And this gives me a good indication of how much bacteria each different natural material let through each time I ran the filter. Okay, so here are my results. So this is a graph of the volume of the sample I added compared to how much bacteria was in the effluent. The blue bars represents 100% sand filter. So the first goal of this was just to fully characterize my problem. So this blue bar helps with that. As you can see, this has a pretty early breakthrough of bacteria into the effluent, which shows that it's probably not very effective in filtering liquid waste. The next step was to look at this sand pebble filter, represented by these red bars. This was combined in a 1.5 to 1 ratio. I used pebbles because they have a high porosity, which means they can actually capture some of the liquid waste inside of them as it's passing through, which can increase filter effectiveness. So as you can see, that is exactly what happened. These red bars showed a later breakthrough of bacteria into the effluent, and it looked like it was working pretty well. After performing the basic calculations, it turns out it was 83% more effective than the 100% sand filter in liquid waste filtration. Okay, so these are some of my replicates and long-term results. So as you can see, both of these tests show that there's a clear early advantage of the liquid filter, of the sand pebble filter in liquid waste filtration. However, you also might notice that both of these graphs go to very high values of bacteria, red bars or blue bars. So there is still breakthrough in the sand pebble filter, and it gets to pretty high numbers of bacteria. However, if we map this back to village conditions, my tests were done in rapid succession of about 7 to 12 runs. But people don't go to the bathroom in a row of 7 to 12 people. There is some time in between. So this recovery time that the filter has to kind of rejuvenate itself, coupled with this clear early advantage demonstrated, show there's definitely a strong potential for in-field improvement by adding filters to the sand bed. Okay, so these initial results, just to recap, clearly show that a sand pebble filter was more effective. And also, one other interesting tidbit is that the sand pebble filter, in fact, took less time on average to travel through the filter. This sounds kind of counterintuitive, but this is actually beneficial because this way the filter systems won't get too backed up. And that means they can be used for longer. So this was also pretty useful. So, however, this project is an ongoing project, and I have a lot of ideas that I want to continue. For one thing, right now, I'm further looking into quantifying this recovery time process I just discussed. I'm also looking into other substances with antimicrobial properties to see if I can increase filter longevity further. After this, I'm really interested in looking into something called low potential electrolysis, and I'm trying to do this with solar panels to see if I can actually increase filter efficiency by coupling this with those antimicrobials. And after this, of course, I want to actually install these in the village themselves. Actually, Solab International has given me permission to make changes as I see fit in future installations, which I'm very happy about. After this, I'll perform surrounding soil analysis at installation and at 6-month intervals thereafter. This will give me a good idea of how much bacteria is actually getting through my filter. So how will my filters actually work? So right now, I was really excited to take on this project, and the time seems right, because currently Prime Minister Modi has recently announced in India, toilets first, temples later. By placing sanitation over an institution so ingrained in India's history as religion is a big first step. So as hundreds of thousands of systems are installed all over India and the rest of the world, I hope that my project can help make these toilets safer, not only for the villages of India, but also for people all over the world. And I'd really like to thank the mentors who made this possible. Dr. Yelena Naumova, Dr. Lisa Rodenberg, Dr. Craig Phelps. Without their help, I really wouldn't be here. Also, I'd like to thank Solab International, who's been very accommodating, and the RNS Foundation and the Villagers Survey. They've been great to get this project kickstarted for me, and I'm really, really fortunate to be able to be here and present in front of all of you. So I hope you enjoyed it, and please feel free to ask questions, and here's some references. Thank you.
So, looking through your references, I was surprised to see two things not referenced: the World Toilet Organization and the book The Big Necessity. By any chance have you read The Big Necessity?
No, sorry.
It was a New York Times bestseller list that dealt with this very topic.
Oh, wow.
And one of the issues that were really identified with prior solutions addressing sanitation in the developing world was the issue of maintenance. That these systems would be implemented by an NGO, they would work great for a period of time, the NGO would go home, and then there wouldn't be a maintenance associated with this. So how do you see your improvement relating to the maintenance cycle on these toilets?
I'm glad you mentioned that. So the question was, how do I see this project relating to the maintenance, like the long-term maintenance? Mm-hmm. So actually, right now, just the sand filter layer is pretty effective in terms of maintenance, because people really only have to change this at installation and when the pits are open, after decomposition takes place. However, your question might be, when I'm adding all these different materials to them, like how do I make sure that it's probably kind of difficult to maintain these? The answer to that is I'm actually trying to account for these in the materials I'm picking. I'm picking materials that will only have to be changed at installation and at the 3 to 5 year period after we take out the waste. So this will mean that it's completely clean to go in there and change things. And also I'm making sure that the things I add have to be combined in a good mixture. So nothing has to be combined in like very specific places or anything, so it's also very easy to do. And actually currently I've been working with Solab International and a few skilled villagers to see if we can actually train them to install and maintain these systems in the future. And so far it's been working great, so.
Could you remind again how much was the cost of that two-pit system?
Sure. So the question was, how much was the cost of the system? So the cost was $500, but the way we're paying for it is a kind of innovative 3-step approach. So it's called PPP, one for private, one for people, one for public. So public for the government, private for the RNS Foundation, and people is like me and the villagers, so I'm fundraising for it.
Okay. So in general, though, what's the consensus? What is a good adoption cost breakout? Because I'm sure no villagers or very few, if they could afford $500, they would already have a toilet. The second question is, what is a safe level of sort of leakage of these bacteria? At what level do you say that it is safe?
Sure. Okay, so the question was first, what's a good cost for these systems, and also what's a safe level of leakage of bacteria? So to answer your first question, right now, looking into alternate solutions, many of these range anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. So these, of course, are completely infeasible. So you might be wondering why even $500 just seem pretty expensive, though. So that's why with my own fundraising and some grants that I'm applying to, local government and local fundraisers, such as the RNS Foundation, have been very helpful in this. To answer your next question, the amount of leakage present. So right now, basically, sorry. So right now in my data, I was basically looking for just improvements to this. So the current leakage that I haven't really quantified how much leakage should be the right amount, but I'm just looking for ways so that bacteria does not start flowing out like almost immediately. I want it to last at least a couple of years before this happens. So actually in the future, one of the steps is going into the village and actually performing a surrounding soil analysis of these toilets, because that'll give me a good idea of what to expect, I think.
Stay with the graph. This is from your test, correct?
Yeah.
How does this compare to the reality?
Okay, so if I map this back to village conditions, what happens is each of these runs is supposed to represent one time that someone goes to the bathroom. All the samples.
Which one?
So each of these runs. So each of these represents one run of people going to the bathrooms. Sometimes they're a little bit more, depending. I vary the volume a little bit, but each of them is supposed to represent one person going to the bathroom. However, there's a major shortcoming in my current research because I do this in rapid succession. So I pour one sample, collect effluent, pour another sample, collect effluent. But however, people don't go to the bathroom one after another in the village. So there is some time in between, and I'm not really accounting for that right now. So that's actually the next step in my research, that I really want to account for that in-between recovery time.
So the question comes to mind, after what period of time, after how many usage the pit is unusable?
So actually right now in the village, so the question was after how many usages is the pit unusable? So right now in the village, it's not really necessarily unusable, it's just that so much waste is getting out into the effluent sample. The pits actually fill up in about 3 to 5 years, so I guess after that you'd have to close it off and go to the other pit, or you'd have to empty out the other pit, the compost inside of it. So it's a kind of cool approach because see, the compost only takes 1 to 2 years, while filling up a pit takes 3 to 5 years. So there'll always be an available pit. So these toilets will never be out of use. There'll always be an available pit for waste to flow into.